Hard work is hard. Generally, most people don't like working hard. Some people do, but most people work hard in order to achieve some end goal.
Once you know how the mind works, you can control it, and once you can control it, you can focus it. You can't focus or concentrate something you don't understand.
It should become obvious why things like pornography, not just the accessibility of pornography, but the intensity of pornography, can negatively shape real-world romantic and sexual interactions. This is a serious concern. The discussion is happening now. The underlying neurobiological mechanisms you now understand. And this isn't to pass judgment on whether or not people like or don't like pornography. That's an ethical discussion. It's a moral discussion that has to be decided for each individual, by virtue of age, etc. There's a classic experiment done actually at Stanford many years ago in which children in nursery school and kindergarten drew pictures. And they drew pictures because they like to draw. The researchers took kids that like to draw and they started giving them a reward for drawing. The reward generally was a gold star or something that a young child would find rewarding. Then they stopped giving them the gold star, and what they found is the children had a much lower tendency to draw on their own. No reward. Now, remember, this was an activity that prior to receiving a reward, the children intrinsically enjoyed and selected to do. No one was telling them to draw. What this relates to is so-called intrinsic versus extrinsic reinforcement. When we receive rewards, even if we give ourselves rewards for something, we tend to associate less pleasure with the actual activity itself that evoked the reward. Now that might seem counterintuitive, but that's just the way that these dopaminergic circuits work.
When people say to me, life is too busy, I can't simplify, no, it's you don't want to. You have the choice. Nobody's holding a gun to your head saying you have to associate with these people and you have to do these things. No, you choose to do them.
Any activity that evokes a lot of dopamine release will make it harder to achieve the same level and certainly the greater level of dopamine through a subsequent interaction. So yes, indeed, many people are addicted to pornography, and yes, indeed, many people who regularly indulge in pornography experience challenges in real-world romantic interactions. My colleague at Stanford, Carol Dweck, as many of you know, has come up with this incredible theory and principle, and it actually goes beyond theory and principle, called growth mindset, which is this striving to be better, to be in this mindset of I'm not there yet, but striving itself is the end goal, and that of course delivers you to tremendous performance. It's been observed over and over and over again that people that have growth mindset, kids that have growth mindset, end up performing very well because they're focused on the effort itself.
People say this to me all the time. I hang around with entrepreneurs and other people that you and I have met. They've come up with Snapchat. You need to be on Snapchat. I'm like, I don't need to be on Snapchat. I don't care what comes up tomorrow, I'm not going to do it. Because I can't sustain it, right? That's going to take a little bit more of my energy each day. And I only have this much energy, and I need to divide it between all the people and things that I love.
Fortunately, most people do not experience or pursue enormous increases in dopamine leading to these severe drops in baseline. Many people do, however, and that's what we call addiction. When somebody pursues a drug or an activity that leads to huge increases in dopamine, and now you understand that afterward the baseline of dopamine drops because of depletion of dopamine, the readily releasable pool. The dopamine is literally not around to be released, and so people feel pretty lousy. And so you can tell yourself the effort part is the good part. I know it's painful. I know this doesn't feel good, but I'm focused on this. I'm going to start to access the reward. You will find the rewards, meaning the dopamine release inside of effort if you repeat this over and over again. And what's beautiful about it is that it starts to become reflexive for all types of effort. When we focus only on the trophy, only on the grade, only on the win as the reward, you undermine that entire process.
The average person sleeps about 7 to 8 hours, to say, roughly. So we're awake for about 16 hours of the day. Let's just say on average we're practicing it 13 hours a day, 7 days a week distraction. And then you wonder why you're so good at it. That's the law of practice. The law of practice is that we become good at whatever it is we practice. Whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't matter. If you practice something over and over and over again, you become really good at it. And that's why people are so good at distraction, because it's what they practice. And then people say things like, technology are great distractors, right? Smartphones. Oh, I have this thing so distracting, my smartphone. The internet. Are they distractors? I'd like to say no first, and then yes. But mostly no. Technology in itself is not a bad thing. It's actually a beautiful thing, as long as we're in charge of it. But if every time your iPhone beeps or makes a sound and you turn to it and you go, yes, master, how can I serve you today? Then you live in that world of distraction. It's training you to be distracted. But if you actually use technology, then technology is not a bad thing.
In those moments of the most intense friction, you tell yourself, this is very painful, and because it's painful, it will evoke an increase in dopamine release later, meaning it will increase my baseline in dopamine. But you also have to tell yourself that in that moment, you are doing it by choice and you're doing it because you love it. And I know that sounds like lying to yourself, and in some ways it is lying to yourself, but it's lying to yourself in the context of a truth, which is that you want it to feel better. You want it to feel even pleasurable.
To be concentrated is to be able to keep your awareness on one thing for an extended period of time. How do we practice this? We practice this by doing one thing at a time throughout the day. What's the best way to develop concentration? The best way to develop concentration is to bring that practice into our everyday life. Look at opportunities throughout your day. In your average day, ask yourself, what's a great opportunity to practice concentration?
People will play a video game, they love it, it's super exciting to them, and then they'll keep playing and playing and playing, and either one of two things happens, typically both. First of all, I always say addiction is a progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. So oftentimes what will happen is the person only has excitement and can achieve dopamine release to the same extent doing that behavior and not other behaviors. And so they start losing interest in school, they start losing interest in relationships, they start losing interest in fitness and well-being, and depletes their life. And eventually what typically happens is they will stop getting dopamine release from that activity as well, and then they drop into a pretty serious depression. And this can get very severe, and people have committed suicide from these sorts of patterns of activity. The ability to access this pleasure from effort aspect of our dopaminergic circuitry is without question the most powerful aspect of dopamine and our biology of dopamine. And the beautiful thing is it's accessible to all of us.
When you're able to concentrate, you're able to focus all your energy into a single given point. Life is a manifestation of where your energy is flowing. And if you can't concentrate your energy, the things that you want to manifest in your life becomes very, very challenging. So learn to concentrate by doing one thing at a time. Bring this practice into everything that you do throughout the day. Make it a part of your life. Practice, practice, practice. Keep bringing awareness back and keep it focused on one thing at a time.
But what about the more typical scenario? What about the scenario of somebody who is really good at working during the week, they exercise during the week, they drink on the weekends? Well, that person is only consuming alcohol maybe 1 or 2 nights a week, but oftentimes that same person will be spiking their dopamine with food during the middle of the week. Now, we all have to eat, and it's nice to eat foods that we enjoy. I certainly do that. I love food, in fact. But let's say they're eating foods that really evoke a lot of dopamine release in the middle of the week. They're drinking 1 or 2 days on the weekend. They are one of these work hard, play hard types, so they're swimming a couple miles in the ocean in the middle of the week as well. They're going out dancing once on the weekend. Sounds like a pretty balanced life, as I describe it. Well, here's the problem. The problem is that dopamine is not just evoked by one of these activities. Dopamine is evoked by all of these activities.